All right, what's going on YouTube? This is BoxingWave. I'm gonna try to keep this video not so long. Um, it's been a couple days now, almost a couple days since this news broke about Terrence Crawford suing Bob Arum, basically for racial bias. Right? He's suing them for around $10 million. All right, some certain bits and pieces and parts about the actual suit has come out as far as his claims, his allegations towards Bob Arum, why he's doing it. And I honestly believe that we just got to wait and see how this play out. But I'm going to go over a few key things that I've noticed and what I think about Bob. I'm not a fan of Bob Arum. I've never been a fan of Bob Arum. I'm sure most of you know that. I'm not a fan of Bob Arum at all. I mean, I'm not a fan of boxing promoters or most of these businessmen because I feel like they keep us from getting the fights that we want. But as far as Bob Arum, I never really liked him. You know, I respect the fact that he's been a part of so many historical fights in this sport. All right. Him and all the other promoters, you know, when it comes to Don King, Barry Hearn, and all of these other guys over the years that's been around, Frank Warren, all of these guys has been around and they were a part of making big fights happen. All right. But they also were a part of fights not taking place. You know, at least in my, I could definitely speak on the fights on my time because there's a lot of fights that I wanted to see that I didn't get. There are a lot of fights that I want to see now that I can't get. And most of it has to do with the politics, right? And these promoters, right? Because most of these promoters don't really like each other. But I'm not going to get into all that, all right? So Terrence Crawford is going to be suing Bob Arum. I mean, he's basically saying that Bob Arum and Top Rank are racially biased towards Latino and white fighters. All right, he's basically saying, look, they treat the black fighters like shit. All right, and he threw some names out there. You got guys like Floyd Mayweather who came up, and there's a bunch of scenarios of where they're saying like, look, there's a Black Lives Matter logo that wasn't placed in the midst of everything that happened with George Floyd back in 2020. There was a long list of certain things, and I'm sure that's not everything because Crawford went on to claim that there's a lot of top-ranked fighters that feel the same way, but they're afraid to say anything because they are afraid to get shelved for saying something. All right, so I don't know if this is going to come up during this lawsuit. I have no idea. What my biggest concern of all of this is, does he have enough to prove that it's racial? Like, you know how I said I don't like Bob Arum? I don't like Bob Arum because as a promoter, I don't think he's a good promoter, right? Or maybe he was at one time, but I think he's kind of out of touch. He's 90-something. He's like 91 years old, all right? So he's a little out of touch. I think he says certain comments about his fighters, not just black ones, that are damaging for the fighter. They don't help the fighter. Just last week, I was just tweeting, and I said this on Twitter because I've been discussing this a little bit on Twitter. You know, I don't go in on Twitter, but I said, I'm like, you know, just last week, we were talking about how crappy of a promoter Bob Arum is because of his comments on the Bivol and Better Be It fight, two Russian fighters. We want that fight, but Bob is telling us it's boring. Now, it's a unification match. I mean, these guys have been champions for quite some time now. All right, these are the guys that stepped up and became champions after the Kovalev and Stevenson era, and they still haven't unified yet. You know, and Bob is telling us that that fight is boring. You know, Bob with Shakur Stevenson. Look at that situation. Shakur wins a title, and now we want to see him fight Oscar Valdez and unify with him, you know, because he beat Miguel Burchell early last year, and we want to see that fight. But instead of getting that fight, Bob Arum is talking about Valdez fighting Navarrete. Navarrete is a fighter that fights in the division below them. So instead of having Shakur and Valdez fight each other right away, he wants a guy from 126 to come up first and get a shot at Valdez. You know? So Bob Arum, to me, I can go on and on and on and on. You know, I've been on here a long time, and I made countless videos about Bob Arum. You know? Again, I respect him. I respect my elders, and I respect the fact that he's been a part of so many fights. I mean, he's at least 50 years into this sport. All right? So he's been around. But at the end of the day, I feel that he's out of touch. And I feel like the way that he talks from a time where the promoter ran the show completely. Barry Hearn said it himself. And I like to always bring up that interview, that press conference with Dillian White. I love to bring it up because there's so much truth with what he said. Back then, these arrogant promoters used to run the show. They're not like Eddie. Okay, they're not like the younger promoters where they work for the fighter. No, the fighter worked for them. They were slave traders. This is what Barry Hearn said out of his mouth. And Bob Arum, he's very arrogant. He's very, very arrogant. There are things that he say where he doesn't like to be questioned. This is when he ran off, start cursing out at Mike Coppinger. This is what Bob Arum does on a regular basis. He starts cursing at any random person that starts bringing up things that he dislike. But my thing is with this whole situation with Bud is, can Bud prove that his issues with Bob Arum stem from racism? Can he prove that? I'm not talking about how you feel. For the people that's out there that believe that this is all racial, I'm not talking about how you feel, how I feel, how people on YouTube may feel, how other people on Twitter may feel. I'm talking about during litigation. Can you actually prove that this man has said and done the things that he's done due to racism? Can you do it? Now, from what I know, brought up Floyd Mayweather. He made some comments about Floyd Mayweather in the past. He made a lot of comments about Guillermo Rigondeaux. I remember that clearly. I was watching it. You know, I made my channel maybe sometime around the time where Rigondeaux fought Joseph Obedko. Okay, I remember when Rigo beat Nonito Donaire, Bob Arum just despised him. It seems like any interview that had to do with Guillermo Rigondeaux after that Donaire fight, it just seemed like he was always negative, always just discrediting him and his style and how he wasn't marketable, and how other fighters just weren't marketable. And the thing with Terrence Crawford, that has happened. He's made comments talking about how much money he has lost and how he has done a poor job on trying to market himself, which is a whole nother topic that we can discuss at a later time. I would like to go live and discuss that because there's a trend of, especially with black fighters, where in order to market themselves, they have to be flashy. They have to talk a lot of trash. They have to be like a Mayweather. They have to be like a Broner. They have to be like a Roy Jones. And some fighters are just not like that. Bud is not like that. Yes, he will talk a little trash leading up to a fight against his opponent. You know, he's had some wild weigh-ins and stuff. But normally when there's not a fight going on, he kind of disappears. He's a family man, and he doesn't stay in the drama. He kind of keeps himself private. He's not really flashy. He's not throwing money around. He's not showing off all his cars, all his jewelry. He's not that type of dude. He's kind of clean, laid-back type of dude. So when a promoter is saying you got to do more to market yourself, I don't necessarily agree with that coming from the promoter that are making slanderous comments about his fighter. Whether it's true or not, you are his promoter. You are a promoter. I made another comment on Twitter weeks ago. You know, I said something about, you know, there are more promoters today that's trying to convince you that a fight should not take place. And I never understood that. I saw an interview with Leonard Ellerbe, and he basically said, this is a while back, but not that long ago. He was just basically saying, Crawford and Spence, nobody wants to see that fight. What do you mean no one wants to see that fight? Everybody wants to see that fight. Why would you say that? You're basically working as a promoter, right? For Mayweather Promotions or PBC or whatever. Why would you tell the public that nobody wants to see that fight? Why would you say that? And this is what I mean. I don't like promoters. Because you're telling boxing fans that are demanding you can't go anywhere. Certain fighters can't go anywhere without being questioned about a certain fight, a specific fight. You know what I'm saying? So Bob Arum, as a promoter, yes, I get it. I think, Bud re-signed with Bob back in 2018, right? We signed with him. Very controversial because at the time, many of us wanted him to go maybe to the PBC route and try to get these fights with Errol and Thurman and Porter and Danny and now even a Ugas. But he re-signed with Bob, but he had like a $4 million purse guarantee. And this is where Bob claims he's losing the money because he's not making the money back. Even if that's the case, when you're talking about it, why must you keep ranting about it? Why do you have to jokingly say, like, I could have bought a house in Beverly Hills? Why? You chose to re-sign Bud, again, knowing this, just to slander him about it. Now, as far as the contracts, I know a lot of the information and the details of the contract has come out. The thing is, we really don't know as boxing fans. I personally don't think Bob Arum is a great promoter. But again, how do you prove that his motives are racial? This is a guy that many of his fighters had issues with. Lomachenko thought he got robbed by Bob Arum after he lost to Teofimo Lopez. Manny Pacquiao had issues with Bob Arum after the Jeff Horn loss. Miguel Cotto, what about the comments that Bob said about Cotto and his father? Do you guys remember that? Oscar De La Hoya, what about him? There's a long list of fighters that had some serious issues, lawsuits against Bob Arum. They're not all black. So regardless of how you feel, how are you able to prove that this is just a black thing outside of just some comments that were said? Because I don't know if that is going to hold up. It could. It might. I mean, listen, I'm a Bud Crawford fan. Y'all know that. I'm a big fan of Bud. I'm a big fan of him. And I'm not going to sit here and defend Bob Arum. But at the same time, I'm assuming there's more to this story than what is being reported. I would like to assume so. Because I think it's proven that Bob Arum is an arrogant asshole that is out of touch with the way things are going right now. You know, because boxers today can speak up about what's going on. We have social media. Anywhere you go, you even got YouTubers like myself that are bringing boxers to their channels and interviewing them. You got fans interviewing boxers directly. You didn't always have that. Things has changed. People are aware of what's going on. People know the business more than they ever did. Everybody's all caught up in the politics of everything. That wasn't always the case. It wasn't. Even with hardcore boxing fans, they didn't know. You can ask them. People from back in the day, they didn't know. They didn't know all about all the politics. And if you did know some, it wasn't like you was able to just jump on the internet and find out. You didn't have that. So times are changed, and Bob is out of touch, and he gets very frustrated when certain people ask these kind of questions. Now, the thing with Bud, and I will hope for his sake, he has more. I hope he has a good case. It seemed to be a very calculated move as far as based on timing. Because, I know people were saying, well, why resign one? And why not saying this while you will still sign one? Well, he just said that he was worried and the fear of being shelved. Why would he do it while he's still under contract with Bob? Why would he do it then? So he can get shelved? You saw what happened with Mikey Garcia, another fighter that had issues with Bob. Do you want him to get shelved and not fight for 3 years when he's in his mid-30s? I don't think it's a good idea. He waited till he was out of his contract, had his biggest payday, his purse with Sean Porter, his biggest win of his career, probably. And what does he do? He's suing Bob Arum. But as far as unfairness, you are getting paid a lot. You have a pretty good guaranteed purse for someone that is allegedly not bringing the money back in, right? I don't know what Bob promised you. I know there was something in there as far as there was an agreement that maybe a $900,000 payout was supposed to come about, maybe if the Spence fight didn't happen. I don't know if it's Bob's fault that the Spence fight didn't happen. It seemed like Spence is a PBC guy. We talk about this all the time. Spence was looking to do his thing over there on the PBC. Plus, there was a couple things that slowed things down, right? He was in a car accident. He had an eye injury. There's fights that he missed out on as well while trying to be unified over there. Now, I still believe he should have fought Bud when people wanted to fight, but it was clear that they were trying to get some leverage going to the fight with Bud. They acknowledge how good Bud is. I know Spence has Bud in his top 5 pound for pound. So he's really aware, no matter how hard his hardcore fans feel about it. He acknowledged Bud and his talent. He's acknowledged that. But with all that being said, I don't want to get way too much off track, but I don't know what exactly Bob promised, but I'm not sure if Bob tried to make a fight. I don't know what he's done. All I know is that it's a two-way street. Y'all gotta come together and make the fight together. If one party wants to make the fight and the other one doesn't because they have their own group, and their own champions over there, like a Sean Porter at the time, like a Ugas now, or a Manny Pacquiao then, they're going to try to make the fights work over there. Because again, at the end of the day, I know a lot of people make it seem they don't like bringing this up, but this was a top ranked thing at one point too, where they had everything in-house and they kept it in-house. It's just that they don't have the stable that the PBC has now at welterweight. You know what I'm saying? PBC is running the show right now in the welterweight. It's starting to get a little mixed up now because a lot of the older guys are getting up there. I don't know how that's long it's going to stand that way, but again, I don't know if he has enough to win this lawsuit. I don't know. We just got to wait and see how it all play out. And that's it. We could feel whatever way we want to feel, but in his case, I hope he can prove it, because if he can't prove it, he'll be in a lot of trouble and it will cost him. Because you're going to get counter-sued for defamation of saying someone in his brand is racist. And if you don't have enough proof this can turn out really bad. And that's what my biggest concern of all this. I'm not really concerned with Bob Arum. I'm not concerned with these promoters like that, but it's specifically him. I've seen what he said about fighters. I've seen him try to convince fans that certain fights that we'd wanted didn't make sense. I was very shocked to see how many people that were defending Bob Arum yesterday. Well, I shouldn't really be surprised, but people act like they don't know that these promoters are like that, especially these older promoters. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of issues going on. Look at Teofimo Lopez and Bob Arum in their situation. He's not a black fighter. That's what I'm concerned about. Because there's a lot of issues with Latino fighters. Oscar, Mikey, T.O. List goes on and on. Again, I'm expecting more information to come as time goes, depending on how far this goes. I wish Terrence Bud Crawford the best. But I don't know. I don't know, man. I just don't know. I don't know if it's going to be enough. I hope it is. But I don't know enough to think that he has a fair chance. I'm not saying he doesn't have a shot, but I'm not saying he does neither. Because there's arguments that could be made. Yes, Bob has said comments. He has made comments. All right? But as far as the business aspect, I don't know enough to be able to tell you whether or not Bud has a shot in winning this lawsuit. I don't know enough. None of us do, in my opinion. I really don't think any of us do know enough. We don't know what's going to be brought up there. You know? I'll tell you one thing, though. If Crawford happens to win this, it's going to be big because there's a lot of black fighters over in Top Rank. There's a lot of black fighters there. You know? Also, you know, I know this real quick because I want to go. I'm definitely going to talk more about this, but, you know, Lomachenko. I want to say Lomachenko. I want to say Chocolatito. These are 3 pound-for-pound-ish fighters that was under Top Rank stable around the same time. You know, this is before Chocolatito got knocked out. And, you know, Lomachenko's been there, and it's always been a back and forth debate between who was, like, number one, you know, if we're not including Canelo. But if we're talking about who were number one, you know, there was always a debate. And a lot of fans feel that there was always a stronger push for Lomachenko because he was white. All right? Me personally, this is how I feel. I think there was a stronger push for Lomachenko, right? I think there was a stronger push for him than Terrence Bud Crawford. But I knew Crawford was making a hell of a lot more money, and I know he was selling out bigger arenas than Lomachenko. I also believe that Bud is the more successful fighter between the two as far as professional, you know, pro fights, you know. His record, his wins, no losses, being undisputed. I think his accolades trumps Lomachenko, and I think he's just a better boxer. That's subjective, but I think he's a better boxer overall than Lomachenko. But he was always pushed not as much. But he still made more. His purses have always been more than Lomachenko's. Same thing with Chocolatito. Chocolatito was pushed as the pound-for-pound number one. Even when Bud was in the picture, even when Lomachenko was in the picture, he was getting pushed as a pound-for-pound number one, even over Lomachenko at one point. He was marketed as a number one pound-for-pound fighter. You know? a lot of people feel because of comments that's made by Bob Arum about like a Chocolatito or about like a Lomachenko, always positive coming from Bob, not so positive when it came to Bud Crawford. Even with that, is that going to be enough to say that it's a racial bias? Racial bias. Is that going to be enough? That I don't know. You know, again, it doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter how all of us, everybody here that's watching it feels. It's about what you can prove in court. You know, and I hope for his sake, it seemed like this is all very calculated. I'm sure it was planned for a while. That's my guess. Will it be enough though? I don't know. Just gotta wait and see. All right. So anyway, we'll probably be discussing this some more, you know, when I go on live. You know, you'll never see me sitting here defending Bob Arum, you know, unless it was clear cut, like Bob is not at fault. In this scenario here, we don't know all the facts to determine anything. All I do know is that based on the comments that Bob has said throughout me even knowing who he is, he said a lot of things that I thought wasn't good for his fighters. There's plenty of them. All right, so that's my stance on defending him. This is why I wouldn't defend him. But I don't know if it's all racial. You know, George Foreman came out, and Bob has already responded and basically said that this is a form of extortion, you know. And George Foreman came out and said, listen, he's known Bob for many, many years now. And he defended Bob Arum. And he said, Bob Arum is not a nice guy, but racist, he is not. And I'm not saying I agree with George because I don't know enough. This is a man that knows Bob directly. What I will say is that I think Bob is arrogant, but Bob is always about the money. Just like most of these promoters, he's about the money. He's going where the money is at. In this scenario, if it's true that he can prove that I'm losing money here, I've been losing money here. Anyway, I think I covered all the stuff. I mean, there's so much we can really say. It's just really about proving it. And that's what we got to have to just sit back and be patient for. All right, but you can't really let your personal feelings get caught up in the mix. It's just like, this is a lawsuit, man. You know, you can't go in there and just say, I feel like this, I feel like that. It's not how it works. All right. Anyway, I'm out. Peace.